In the hush of an old stone church under golden light spilling through stained glass, a bride stood alone at the altar, heart pounding, bouquet trembling, while the groom's voice shattered everything. "I can't marry a nobody like you." Laughter erupted, whispers cut like knives. But as the ground began to shake and the doors burst open, one truth waited in the shadows. The woman they mocked had never been nobody. She had been forgotten until now. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe. The old stone church stood quiet under a pale autumn sky, sunlight filtering through stained glass in soft gold shafts that warmed the wooden pews, and the scent of lilies lingered in the still air. Sienna Vale stood at the altar in her simple white satin dress, the fabric smooth against her skin, long sleeves covering the faint scars from years gone by. She was 30, a woman who had once led men through fire as a Navy SEAL captain, now facing a moment she thought would mend the quiet emptiness inside her. Her long black hair was tied back neatly, her brown eyes steady, though a faint tremor ran through her hands as she held the bouquet. Richard Hale, the groom beside her, 33 or so, tall and polished in his black tuxedo, had seemed kind once, his blue eyes warm in quieter times. But today his face was tight, jaw set, as if something heavy pressed on him. The guests, dressed in silks and tailored suits, watched from the pews, their whispers already beginning like dry leaves in wind. The minister spoke the words of promise, and Richard's voice cracked on the first syllable. Then he stopped. He looked at Sienna, not with love, but with something colder. "I can't marry a nobody like you," he said, loud enough for the whole church to hear. The microphone fell from his hand with a dull thud. Laughter rippled through the crowd, sharp and sudden, like glass breaking. Sienna felt the heat rise in her cheeks, but she did not move. She stood there, bouquet trembling slightly, the thorns pricking her palms. In her mind, she saw the orphan girl she had been, the one who learned early that silence was armor. The laughter grew, names whispered: orphan, climber, no one. Each word landing like a small stone. Yet beneath the hurt, a deeper truth held her upright. She had survived worse than words. Max lay at her feet, the German shepherd who had walked beside her through every hard day since the war. He was 8 or 9 now, coat black and tan, body strong and steady, ears always up, eyes fixed on her. He had been trained to find hidden dangers, to guard lives in the dark, and later to sense the quiet storms inside her head when the nightmares came. Today, he wore only his plain black collar, the old military tag still on it. When a guest leaned too close, laughing low, Max rose slowly, a deep rumble in his throat, not loud, just enough. The man stepped back. Max returned to her side, pressed his warm flank against her leg. Sienna felt the steady rise and fall of his breathing, a rhythm older than pain. Then the weight became too much. She lowered herself to her knees on the cool stone floor, the dress pooling around her. She wrapped her arms around Max's neck, buried her face in the thick fur at his shoulder. "You're the only family I've got," she whispered, voice so soft it barely carried. Max did not pull away. He leaned in, nudged his broad head gently against her chest, warm breath on her skin, a quiet promise that he would stay. For a long moment the church noise faded, the laughter, the whispers, replaced by the soft sound of his heartbeat against hers. In that embrace, she remembered nights after missions, when the world felt broken, and Max had simply lain beside her, never asking for explanations, only presence. The pain was still there, deep and raw, but so was something steadier, the knowledge that loyalty like this does not break. Outside, far off at first, then closer, the ground began to tremble. A low rumble grew beneath the stone, engines or something heavier, shaking the stained glass very faintly. Sienna lifted her head, still holding Max, and looked toward the doors. The laughter in the room faltered, uncertain. Max's ears flicked forward, alert. Whatever was coming, it carried weight. And in that quiet shift, with her hand still buried in Max's fur, Sienna felt the first small stirring of something she had almost forgotten: hope that the story was not over. The Hale estate glowed under strings of soft white lights, the grand lawn stretching into shadow, the air carrying the faint scent of cut grass and expensive perfume, a quiet hum of laughter drifting from open windows. The night before the wedding, Sienna had walked those polished halls in a simple gray dress, no jewelry, her hair loose but neat. She was 30, still carrying the weight of years in uniform, her brown eyes watchful, her posture straight from habit. The guests moved like figures in a painting, silk gowns, tailored suits, glasses catching the chandelier light. They spoke of old money, old names. Sienna stood near the dessert table, a glass of water in her hand, feeling the room's eyes settle on her like a chill. A woman in sequins leaned close to her companion, voice low but clear. An orphan. Really? How does someone like her even get here? The words landed soft, then sharp. Sienna heard them all, felt the old ache rise. The girl with no family, no right. But she did not flinch. She met the woman's gaze for a moment, then looked away, letting the silence speak. It was her shield, worn smooth over time. Vanessa appeared then, tall and golden, 31 or so, hair in perfect waves, red dress clinging like a second skin. She had been Richard's before, and the memory still lingered in her sharp smile. She approached with a glass of champagne, voice sweet as syrup. "You must be so excited," she said. "Marrying into the Hales, a miracle for someone like you." The nearby group chuckled. Sienna's fingers tightened on her glass, water trembling. She looked at Vanessa steadily. "A miracle's only needed when you doubt what's real." The words were quiet, but they cut. Vanessa's smile froze, then cracked. She turned away, heels clicking fast across the marble. Sienna exhaled slowly, the room's noise rushing back. In her chest, something small but sure held firm. She would not beg for their approval. Max had followed her every step that night. The German shepherd moved with calm purpose, black and tan coat gleaming under the lights, ears alert. When a man in a dark suit, too much bourbon too close, leaned in with a slurred compliment, Max rose, a low growl rolling deep in his throat. The man stepped back, face paling. Max returned to Sienna's side, pressed against her leg, warm and solid. Later, in the quiet hallway, away from the crowd, he found it. A plain envelope slipped under a door, half hidden. Max nosed it toward her, tail low, eyes fixed. Inside was a grainy photograph. Sienna, younger, in desert fatigues, standing with her unit. The mission that had broken everything. 5 years ago. The report buried, her name erased. She stared at the image, breath catching. Max sat beside her, head tilted, watching. In the silence, she remembered the dust, the smoke, the weight of carrying men who could not walk. And Max, wounded, limping, still at her heel, refusing to leave. That night she had bandaged him first, his quiet whine the only sound in the dark. He had taught her then, strength is not loud, it is staying. She knelt there in the dim hall, envelope in hand, and wrapped her arms around Max's neck. His fur was warm, his breathing steady. "You never left," she whispered. The memory of that mission, of the lies that followed, of the silence she had chosen, it all settled heavier now. Yet in Max's quiet presence, something shifted. She felt the old wound, but also the lesson he had carried through every hard day. Loyalty does not demand words. It simply endures. She rose, tucked the photo away, and walked back toward the party lights. The decision was made. Tomorrow she would stand at the altar, silent and straight, no matter what came. Because some things, some bonds, were worth the quiet fight. The night deepened outside the windows, the lights on the lawn flickering like distant stars. Sienna rested her hand on Max's head, feeling the slow rise of his breath. In that touch was a promise she had almost forgotten. Whatever tomorrow brought, she would not walk alone. The church air had grown thick, heavy with the scent of lilies wilting in their vases, sunlight now slanting lower through the stained glass, painting long shadows across the stone floor. The laughter had died down, but the words kept coming, quieter now, sharper. Voices from the pews carried like smoke. "Failed soldier," one said. "Deserter," another murmured. Then a woman rose. Senator Victoria Kane, 58, silver hair cut short and precise, her gray suit tailored sharp as a blade. She stood with the posture of someone who had spent decades commanding rooms, her voice smooth but edged, carrying the weight of power she had wielded without apology. She looked at Sienna and spoke slowly, each word measured. "If you were so great, Captain, why did you leave the service in disgrace?" The question hung there, and the room leaned in, hungry. Sienna met her gaze, brown eyes steady, though inside the old wound opened again, the mission, the buried report, the silence that had cost her everything. She did not raise her voice. "Because some truths are too heavy for the ones who profit from lies," she said, quiet, clear. A few heads turned. A ripple of unease passed through the crowd. Kane's lips tightened, but she did not answer. The silence that followed felt like breath held too long. Max sensed it before anyone else. The ground trembled again, deeper this time, a low vibration rising through the stone. He rose to his full height, black and tan coat bristling, ears forward, a deep growl rolling from his chest, not angry, but warning. He stepped in front of Sienna, body low, muscles taut, a living shield between her and the room. His eyes never left the doors. Sienna rested a hand on his head, feeling the quick rise of his breath, the steady heat of him. In that touch she felt the years they had shared, the nights he had lain awake when her dreams turned dark, the way he had never once turned away. The crowd shifted, uneasy. Whispers grew. Then the doors burst open. 1,000 men and women in black tactical gear poured in, boots heavy on the marble, moving as one. 100 black SUVs lined the lawn outside, engines still rumbling. They formed ranks in the aisle, crisp and silent, then raised their hands in unison. "Captain Vale!" The salute rang out clear and proud. At their head stood Commander Blake, 48, broad-shouldered, salt and pepper hair, cropped short, a small scar tracing his left cheek from a firefight long past. His eyes, weathered but kind, found Sienna and softened. He stepped forward, voice low but carrying. "Captain Vale," he said, "it's time." He held up a worn folder, edges frayed. 5 years ago, in that ambush, you saved over 100 of us. You carried men out under fire. You refused to leave anyone behind. The report was buried, your name erased. But we never forgot. The words settled over the room like rain after drought. Max's ears flicked. Then he barked once, sharp, joyful, tail sweeping the air in wide arcs. He recognized them, old brothers and sisters from the dust and the dark. He bounded forward a step, then back to Sienna, pressing close, eyes bright. The crowd sat stunned. Faces that had mocked now looked away. Some hands covered mouths. The laughter was gone, replaced by a hush deeper than before. Sienna stood there, hand still on Max's head, feeling the shift inside her, the shame they had tried to place on her. It lifted, slow as fog burning off in morning light. She looked at Blake, at the ranks of men and women who had come for her, and something in her chest loosened. Not anger, not triumph, just the quiet knowledge that she had never been as alone as they wanted her to believe. Max leaned into her leg, warm, flank steady, his breathing even again. In his eyes she saw the same truth she had carried all these years. Loyalty remembers. It does not fade. The light through the glass grew warmer, touching the stone, touching her dress, touching the fur of the dog who had never left her side. In that moment, with the room holding its breath, Sienna felt the first true breath of freedom she had known in years. The church had fallen into a hush deeper than prayer. The only sounds, the faint creak of old wood settling and the soft, even breathing of 1,000 men and women standing at attention, their black uniforms absorbing the last golden light of the afternoon. Commander Blake opened the folder with steady hands. The papers inside were worn, edges yellowed, stamped with seals long forgotten by most. He spoke slowly, voice low and measured, the way a man speaks when he has carried a truth too long. 5 years ago, he said, in that valley, the ambush came fast, IEDs buried in the dust. But Max, your Max, found them first. His nose caught the wire, the faint chemical scent no one else could. He froze, ears up, then barked once. That bark saved us. Sienna listened, hand resting on Max's head, feeling the warmth of his fur under her palm. She remembered the moment, the explosion that never came because of him, the way she had dropped to her knees in the dirt to check him, finding blood on his flank, but his eyes still bright, still fixed on her. Blake continued, "You pulled 17 men out that day, Captain. Carried them miles under fire. Max limped beside you the whole way. The report called it failure. Someone higher up needed it to be failure. But we were there. We know." The words settled over her like a blanket after a long, cold night. The shame she had carried. It loosened, thread by thread. Then movement stirred near the front pew. A man in a dark suit, broad-shouldered, one of Kane's security, stepped forward, hand reaching for the folder. His face was hard, eyes narrow. Before he could touch it, Max surged. The German shepherd launched with a deep, rolling growl that filled the church, teeth bared just enough. He clamped lightly on the man's wrist, not breaking skin, only holding enough to stop him cold. The man froze, face draining of color. Max held the grip for a heartbeat, then released, stepping back to Sienna's side. Body low, eyes locked on the threat. The room gasped. A few guests stood. Others sat frozen. Sienna looked at the man, then at Max, and felt something shift inside her. Not anger, but a quiet certainty. This dog, who had bled for her once, would bleed again if needed. She turned to Kane, voice steady. "You gave the order to bury it," she said. "Contracts. Millions. My name was the price." Kane's face paled, lips parting, but no sound came. The truth hung there, heavy and undeniable. Memories flooded back then, soft as rain after drought. Sienna saw the valley again, smoke thick, men crying out, Max's whine as shrapnel grazed him. She had bandaged him with strips torn from her own shirt, whispering, "Stay with me, boy." He had, through every mile, through every doubt. He had taught her that courage is not the absence of pain. It is refusing to let pain have the last word. Now, standing in this church with Max pressed warm against her leg, she understood it deeper. The crowd's whispers had changed. Some faces softened, others looked down, hands clasped tight. Blake stepped closer, holding a velvet box. He opened it. Inside lay the Medal of Honor, ribbon gleaming in the dim light. "This was yours," he said. "They hid it, no more." He pinned it to her dress. The SEALs raised their hands in salute, crisp and silent. Max lifted his head high, ears forward, tail still, proud in his own quiet way. Sienna touched the medal, then Max's fur. In that touch was forgiveness, not just for others, but for the girl she had been, the one who thought she had to carry everything alone. The light through the glass had turned soft amber, touching the stone, touching her face, touching the dog who had never once looked away. In the stillness that followed, with the weight of truth finally spoken, Sienna felt the old scars inside her begin to close. Not gone, but no longer bleeding. She looked at Max, and in his steady brown eyes she saw the promise she had needed all along. Some bonds outlast every storm. The light in the church had softened to a warm glow, filtering through the glass like a gentle farewell. The air still heavy with the scent of lilies and polished wood, a quiet peace settling over the room. The hush lingered, broken only by a few lingering whispers, doubts clinging like shadows in the corners. "It's all a show," one voice murmured. "She's still alone." Sienna heard them, felt the old pull of isolation. But she stood steady, hand on the medal pinned to her dress, its cool metal a reminder of truth reclaimed. Then Max stirred. His ears lifted first, body tensing. He turned toward the doors, a low whine building to a bark, sharp, joyful, the kind that echoes from deep memory. His tail whipped the air, black and tan coat rippling as he paced, eyes bright with recognition. Sienna followed his gaze, heart quickening. A figure stepped in from the light outside, dressed in black tactical gear like the others, face hidden behind a mask. He moved with quiet purpose, boots soft on the stone. The room watched, breath held. He reached the altar and slowly pulled the mask away. David. 34, lean and scarred from years in the shadows, short brown hair tousled, a faint beard shadowing his jaw, eyes deep set with the weariness of a man who had lived half a life in secret. His gaze found Sienna, soft and steady, carrying the weight of 7 years' silence, the missions that had killed him, the choices made to protect her. David knelt before her, taking her hand in his, calloused fingers warm against her skin. "I never left you," he said, voice low and rough from disuse, but laced with the old gentleness she remembered. "Undercover, to finish what they started, to keep you safe." The words washed over her like rain after drought. Sienna's breath caught, tears blurring the edges. She saw it all again. The day they told her he was gone. The empty nights that followed. The way she had built walls around her heart. Max bounded forward, pressing his head against David's leg, nudging with a whine, tail sweeping wide. David reached down, scratched behind Max's ears, a small smile breaking through. "You took care of her, boy," he murmured. Max leaned in, warm breath puffing against David's hand, eyes half closed in contentment. The three of them there, woman, man, dog, a circle unbroken. Sienna sank to her knees, arms wrapping around David, face buried in his shoulder. The scent of him, faint dust and sweat, brought it all back. "You both," she whispered, voice breaking. "You both never left me." Tears fell then, hot and quiet, washing away the years of doubt. In that embrace, she felt the pieces fit again, not perfect, but whole. The room faded, whispers silenced by the simple truth of reunion. Outside, the consequences unfolded soft as evening. Cain was led away in quiet cuffs, her silver hair catching the light one last time, face pale with the fall she had never seen coming. Vanessa slipped out a side door, red dress rumpled, her sharp smile gone, the world she had built crumbling under the weight of her own words. Richard sat alone in a pew, head in hands, the family name he had clung to, now a shadow. The Hale estate would stand empty soon, ambitions scattered like leaves. But Sienna did not look back. She rose with David, hand in his, Max trotting beside them, tail high. They walked the aisle together, sunlight spilling through the open doors, warm on their faces. The seals parted for them, salutes held. Outside, the air was fresh, the lawn green underfoot. Max bounded ahead a step, then back, circling with quiet joy. The story would spread, not as scandal, but as something gentler. A woman who stood silent through storms. A dog who never wavered, a love that returned from the shadows. In her heart, Sienna knew it now. Strength is not in the noise, but in the bonds that endure. The sun dipped lower, painting the world in gold, and as they stepped into the light, with Max's warm presence at her side and David's hand steady in hers, Sienna felt the quiet promise of tomorrow, a life rebuilt not on what was lost, but on what had always been there. Dear friends over 65, life can feel heavy with loneliness, the quiet ache of empty rooms, the slow weight of illness, and days that stretch too long without a familiar voice. But remember, you are never truly alone. Like Sienna found in Max and David, love and loyalty often return in the gentlest ways, through a kind word, a shared memory, or God's quiet presence. Hold on. Your story still matters. Share your heart in the comments below, subscribe so we walk this road together, and may the Lord bless you with peace, strength, and healing every single day. You are loved.